Because the scary part to me here, Andy, is like I said, this is the Steve Spagnuolo year in the chapter of the Chiefs dynasty. But that doesn't mean that next year is going to be, right? Like, I'm very curious what the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs offense looks like, because we were so concerned about this offense at different times of the year. We're so concerned about the receiving core at different times this year. Well, obviously, Kadarius Toney's not going to be back with this team. He was a healthy scratch. I think they have Rashee Rice. I'm interested to hear where you stand on Rashee Rice heading into next year. I'm interested to hear where you have, you're kind of looking at Travis Kelce next year, Isaiah Pacheco, the mainstays here. But I would argue that they have a near blank slate at outside receiver. They have a near blank slate in the backfield beyond Pacheco. Like they could add another tight end, and I think that would make a lot of sense. So where do you think Kansas City goes from here, and how do you think that impacts sort of the guys that the bread and butter players in this offense? Because I do think those three guys that I mentioned are bread and butter players for this team in 2024.
Yeah, I've been pretty hesitant to pencil in Rashee Rice as like like rock solid. Absolutely, he's a second round pick. He's a third round pick. He's a wherever people are slotting him at receiver in early draft rankings, things like that, because this team just has such a glaring need for receiving help, and it's probably more than one guy. And there's limited options in free agency, many of whom are probably going to stay with their current teams. So maybe it's, maybe they're doing this through the draft. Obviously, Travis Kelce is at an age at this point where we need to think about like who's going to be taking those targets in 3 years, in 4 years, right? Because it's probably not going to be him. So they have a bunch of answers they have a bunch of questions that need to be answered at receiver. So I'm really hesitant to say specifically, oh man, Rashee Rice, it's 150 targets next year and he's the clear number one. And I don't think we're there, because they have a desperate need for downfield help, an outside receiver. So, it was, again, like that passing game this year, it was almost miraculous, because by the end of the season, everything is at or near the line of scrimmage. I think it was 24 different completions in the Super Bowl were 5 yards downfield or less, right? Like they're just not, this is very horizontal and very limited. And the receiving core has to change a great deal. So I hate to say that we know specifically where this guy and that guy are going to fall in drafts. I think Travis Kelce is now, not that he ever left the overall tight end one discussion, but it was, for a while there at the end of the season, I think we were looking at guys like Trey McBride, obviously Sam Laporta coming off the great year, as like being in that tight end one discussion. And I think Kelce is, obviously Kelce's a part of it. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. But I do think that we've arrived at a spot where he's clearly not a tier of his own guy anymore, which is just gonna lower him in the ranks, right? Like we're not going to be having a conversation about taking him in the first round if we don't think that there's substantial separation between him and the other guys that are in his neighborhood. Also, like the Chiefs just showed us that they are one of the very few teams in the NFL that can legitimately kind of flip the switch when we get into December and become a different team. And, Kelce went from having a pretty up and down, a little bit injury marred, not always elite level performance during the regular season. And it was just an impeccable postseason performance, right? Like right down to him setting up the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, right? That was an exceptional play that picked up the first down that got him down to the 3. Like just an incredible postseason run by him. Not that he had anything to prove, but phenomenal.